Rain poured over New York City in sheets, turning the sidewalks into glossy rivers of reflected neon. Ethan Cole hunched deeper into his jacket collar, one hand shielding his vintage Leica from the drizzle. He'd been out for hours, wandering Broadway, snapping fleeting moments. A couple kissing under a broken umbrella, a cab driver yelling into his phone, a child dragging a balloon twice his size. The kind of scenes he lived for, unfiltered, raw, accidental poetry carved out of chaos. But then, just as he was about to head home, instinct tugged at him. He raised the camera toward a storefront with wide glass windows, more out of habit than intent, and clicked. The sound of the shutter cut through the rain. When he glanced at the preview screen, his pulse spiked. In the reflection of that shop window, blurred yet undeniable, he saw a man in a dark suit pinning a woman against the brick wall of the narrow alley across the street. The man's hand clamped around her throat, his face twisted in brutal focus. Her eyes were wide, mouth open, caught mid-scream. Or maybe the scream had already been silenced. Ethan blinked, lifted his gaze to the alley. Empty. Just rain dripping down rusted fire escapes, puddles quivering under the downpour. The man and woman were gone. For a long, disbelieving moment, Ethan stood frozen, camera pressed against his chest. Did he just? No. He'd seen enough street violence, petty fights, junkies collapsing. But this was different. This was deliberate. This was murder. Or was it? The rain hissed louder. Ethan's throat tightened as he replayed the moment in his head. He had seen it. He knew he had. The photo was still glowing faintly on the screen, a ghostly testimony. His hand trembled as he zoomed in. Grainy pixels distorted the scene, but there it was, the shadow of a man's hand clutching a pale throat. A ring glinted on one finger, a thick band with some kind of crest. A flash of nausea hit him. He snapped the lens cap on and shoved the Leica into his bag. Around him, the city moved indifferently, taxis honking, a siren wailing blocks away, strangers brushing past with umbrellas. He was the only one who had seen, the only witness, and maybe the next target. Ethan's apartment was a modest fourth-floor walk-up in the East Village, a place that smelled of old wood and strong coffee. He tossed his wet jacket aside, booted up the space heater, and sat at his desk. His hands were clammy as he pulled the camera out, connecting it to his laptop. The photo filled the screen. The reflection was grainy, distorted by rain on glass. But it was there, a man in a tailored suit, his hand locked around the throat of a woman whose hair streamed like wet silk. Her body bent backward unnaturally. It was all caught mid-motion, like a frozen scream of violence. Zooming closer, Ethan caught the detail that gnawed at him, the man's ring. Thick, silver, carved with what looked like a crest, some kind of symbol. Too ornate to be ordinary jewelry. His stomach knotted. He knew he should call the police. He even reached for his phone, thumb hovering over the numbers. But hesitation coiled around him. What would he say? I took a random street photo, and there might be a crime hidden in the reflection? They'd laugh him off, or worse, think he was drunk, delusional. And if the man in the photo was real, if he was dangerous, then calling attention to himself could make him a target. Still, his conscience roared. He couldn't just ignore it. A woman's life could be at stake, maybe already gone. Finally, with a heavy breath, he dialed 911. The police came. 2 officers in damp uniforms arrived 20 minutes later, unimpressed by the soaking wet photographer in a cluttered apartment. Ethan showed them the picture, explained everything. They looked. One officer squinted, frowned. Could be a trick of the light, he muttered. Reflections do weird things in rain. But look at the hand, Ethan insisted. His voice cracked with urgency. That's someone choking her. The other officer shrugged. We'll check the alley. They did. 10 minutes later they came back, shaking their heads. Nothing there. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No discarded belongings. Sir, if this was what you think it was, it didn't happen tonight. Ethan's chest caved. He wanted to scream at them, force them to see. But their skepticism was a wall. They took his name, filed a perfunctory report, and left him with the hollow echo of disbelief. Alone again, Ethan sat in the dim glow of his monitor. The rain still lashed against the windows. He opened the file again, staring at the pixels until his eyes blurred. It was real. He knew it. But the photo wasn't enough for anyone else. Out of frustration, or maybe desperation, He uploaded it to an online photography forum he frequented. Caption: strange reflection I caught last night. Thoughts: he wanted to see if others noticed what he saw, without telling them what to look for. Maybe a stranger's fresh eyes would confirm it. Maybe he wasn't insane. He shut the laptop and tried to sleep, but his mind replayed the scene again and again. The weight of that man's hand. The silent scream of the woman's face. Sometime past midnight, Ethan's phone buzzed. A new message notification. He blinked awake, groggy, reaching for it. The message wasn't from a friend or from the forum. It was a direct message from an anonymous account with no profile picture. Delete it. Now. Ethan froze. His breath shallowed. Another message came, seconds later. You don't know what you've seen. Walk away. His skin prickled cold. Someone had found the photo. Someone who didn't want it seen. And that meant only one thing. It was real. By morning, the city dragged its gray belly across the skyline. New York never truly slept, but sometimes it settled into an exhausted mumble. Ethan had only dozed in bursts, startled awake by the phantom feeling of a hand closing around his own throat. Coffee tasted metallic on his tongue. The mug burned his fingers. He kept glancing at the camera as if it might blink. His forum post had exploded overnight. Dozens of comments, most of them infuriating. Some praised the moody composition and the wet glass chiaroscuro, as if he'd staged it. Others argued about whether it was merely a double exposure or an incidental overlay from LED signage. A smaller, more alarming cluster labeled it fake, AI garbage, clout clickbait. The accusatory certainty in their tone stung more than the rest. The anonymous DM still sat like a bruise at the top of his messages. Delete it. Now. You don't know what you've seen. Walk away. He was about to message the forum moderators, maybe ask them to lock the thread, when a new notification slid across the corner of his laptop screen. This one wasn't from the forum. Attempted sign-in from new location. His email provider's bland voice. He hadn't tried to sign in anywhere new. Ethan's stomach tightened. He secured his account with a fresh password, turned on two-factor authentication, did all the responsible, belated things. 5 minutes later, an app he used for client proofing kicked him out. When he tried to log back in, his credentials were rejected. Then his cloud storage pinged him about a file deletion he hadn't authorized. Eventually he watched, helpless, as a progress bar drained a folder of his raw files like blood from a vein. He yanked the laptop's Wi-Fi toggle off, heart jackhammering, and stood up too fast. The room swam. He pressed his palms flat to the desk and breathed. The photo. He had backups of backups. The one thing he always did right. But he could feel something invasive, oily, ghosting along the edges of his life. They weren't just warning him. They were erasing him. A knock rattled the door. He jumped, swallowed, and called, "Who is it?" "Ethan? It's Laura Martinez." The relief came so sharp it hurt. He unlocked the door, and the chain rattled as he slid it free. Laura stepped in, rain-beaded hair tucked behind her ears. 38, compact, whip-smart eyes. She'd been one of the few people in the city Ethan trusted, a friend from the years when he photographed crime scenes for the department under a short-term arts fellowship. They'd shared coffee, grim humor, and too many hallways that stank of bleach and grief. "What happened?" she asked, reading his face with a cop's sixth sense. "Someone's in my accounts," he said, voice thin. "And, there's something you need to see." He opened the Leica RAW on the laptop, turning Wi-Fi back on only long enough to show her the image from the hard drive. He watched her not as a friend, not as someone who appreciated the aesthetics, but as a detective. He watched her posture change as she leaned closer, absorbed, rational mind setting up its scaffolding. "The reflection distorts everything," Laura said quietly. "But that hand, and that angle, and the ring," Ethan said. She zoomed in, stepping through pixels as if they were tiles on a dark street. The ring caught the light where the alleys and neon intersected inside the glass. A blocky crest, a curve like a laurel, something at the center sharp enough to be a blade. "And you took this last night?" Laura asked. "Yes. Broadway. Near 9th. "Did you call it in?" He nodded. 2 uniformed officers. They checked the alley. Nothing. Suggested I'd captured rain and shadows. Asked if I'd been drinking. "And now you're being hacked." He told her about the DM. She listened without interrupting, but her jaw tensed. "Show me the original file path," she said. "Everything you've done with it. Where it's stored." He moved through folders mechanically, like he was demonstrating his rehearsed innocence to a judge. Laura asked precise questions, accounting for timestamps, edits, copies. When she was satisfied, or as satisfied as a detective can be, she sat back and let out a breath. "I'm working 2 missing persons," she said. "Both women. Both vanished within 3 weeks of each other. No physical evidence, no witness statements that make sense. Last known locations are vague. One near the west side, one closer to Midtown. What you saw might be connected, or it might be something else entirely. But that ring," she gestured at the screen. "That ring is a lead." He held onto the word like a floating door in a flood. A lead. "Ethan," she said, tone shifting to something like a warning a teacher gives a student before they cross a line. "If you're in the crosshairs of whoever did this, you need to let me run point. No more posting the photo. No more breadcrumbs. You push, they push harder." "The forum already has it," he said, wincing. "Then I'll need the thread URL. And I need you to forward me the DM." He nodded. He hesitated, then added, "I think someone was outside last night. After the cops left. I felt it. Like I was being watched." He hated how paranoid it sounded. Laura didn't dismiss him. She walked to the window, parted the curtain. The street below looked like a gray tongue, cars parked like teeth. She scanned the rooftops across the way. "You still have that fire escape camera you used to use for time-lapse?" "In the closet." She shot him a look that said, "We're installing it again. If someone's casing you, we want eyes." As she set it up, quick hands tightening mounts, Ethan tried to remember how to breathe in a world that had started to shrink. He kept thinking of the woman's eyes in the photo, wide, glassy, pleading. He knew nothing about her, her name, her laugh, her life. And yet he couldn't stop seeing her. A single click and she had fallen into his possession like a message from a shipwreck. The camera light winked on, a small sentinel. Laura adjusted the field of view to include the building opposite and the slice of sidewalk below. "Okay," she said. "Now talk to me about the ring. Any idea what the crest is?" "It looks old," Ethan said. "Or expensive pretending to be old." "Pretension is expensive in this city," Laura said dryly. She snapped a photo of his screen with her phone. "I'm going to run this through the department's pattern recognition and see if it flags anything. Frats, societies, foundations. Sometimes wealthy men join clubs to feel immortal." "Clubs that kill," he said. She didn't answer. When she left, after resetting his router, after advising him to keep devices off except when absolutely necessary, after insisting he keep his door double-locked, Ethan walked the apartment as if memorizing it for an inventory taken after a fire. The photos on the wall were suddenly too loud. Women laughing, boys skateboarding, retirees playing chess in Tompkins Square. Life had always been his defense against darkness. But now the darkness had purchased a tailored suit and learned his name. He needed air. He wrapped a scarf around his neck and took the stairs 2 at a time. He didn't want to be trapped in the elevator with his thoughts. On the street, the rain had thinned to a fine mist that turned hair into moss. He walked without a plan, camera in his bag mostly for comfort. If he pointed the lens at the city, maybe it would stop pointing back. He cut through a small park where a lone dog tugged a human who wanted to be anywhere else. He paused under a skeletal tree and touched the camera, feeling the weight of it as a real thing, a good thing. He lifted it, framed the dog and the human in a triangle of bare branches, pressed the shutter, an act of faith. When he lowered the camera, someone stood at the edge of the pathway, watching him. The man was ordinary in the way money often is, well-fitting clothes, an umbrella balanced in a relaxed hand, a face assembled from handsome parts. He might have been 30 or 45. He met Ethan's gaze with friendly curiosity that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ethan had seen that expression at gallery openings from people who liked to buy danger wholesale and hang it over a couch. "Nice morning for it," the man said, nodding toward the camera. "Depends on your definition of nice," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice level. The man smiled. "You posted an interesting photo last night. The temperature of the world dropped. I follow that forum." The man continued conversationally. "I like street work. You captured something unusual. A trick of optics, perhaps, but unusual, nonetheless." Ethan forced air in through his nose. His bag strap dug into his shoulder, anchoring him. "Lots of unusual photos online." "Yes, the man said. But not all of them create the wrong kind of attention. He took a step closer. Ethan could smell something faint and clean on him, like expensive soap with no scent. The umbrella tip tapped the path once, a tiny metronome. Delete it, the man said softly, and the casual tone went out of his voice like a light. Delete it everywhere you have it. Forget it. Keep taking pictures of dogs and puddles. We all get to be happy that way. And if I don't, Ethan said, and he hated the tremor under the words. The man's smile returned, easy as a trick. Then the wrong kind of attention becomes the wrong kind of outcome. You're talented, Mr. Cole. It would be a shame to ruin your hands. He turned and walked away under his umbrella, leaving Ethan standing in the wet air with his heart in fragments of glass. He waited until the man turned a corner, then fumbled his phone out and called Laura. Describe him, she said, whole body alert. Ethan did. Clothes. Height. The almost pleasant menace. The line about hands. Do not follow him, she said preemptively. I wasn't going to, he lied. Go home. Now. And keep the door locked. I'll put a patrol on your block for a few hours, but I can't promise anything more. I need that forum link and the DM screenshots. Immediately. He went home. He sent Laura what she needed. Then he paced his apartment until his pulse gave up. He tried to edit a set from last week, the chess players with their monk-like patience, but every face became a mask that might disguise a predator. The city had not changed. He had. At dusk, the fire escape camera pinged his phone with a motion alert. He opened the app. A dark shape moved across the frame on the building opposite, someone lingering by the stoop as if waiting on a friend who would never arrive. He enlarged the view until pixels protested. The person wore a hooded jacket. He couldn't see a face, couldn't be sure of anything except the sense of being measured. He layered the app over the city, laid that uneasy figure over every person on the street, and suddenly he understood why hermits chose caves. He made himself eat. He made himself shower. He made himself breathe. The night took its time. He woke just after 1 to the hollow ring of silence in a city that rarely offered it. For a second, he didn't know what had pulled him from sleep, and then he did. A second motion alert. Another figure at the curb, further away, head tilted up toward his window like a sunflower facing absence. Ethan stood in the dark of his apartment, careful not to backlight himself in the window, and watched. The figure didn't move. He felt watched from a distance smaller than his skin. A soft scratching came from the hallway, then a sound like someone testing a doorknob down the line. His chest cinched. He grabbed his phone, thumbed 911, but didn't press the call yet. The scratching sound stopped. A minute passed. 2, 3. Outside, the second figure slipped away into the gluey dark. He stayed awake until a bruise of dawn appeared, then fell into a sleep so dense it might have been an emergency. Laura arrived just after 8. She was holding a paper bag that smelled like cinnamon and coffee, so strong it raised the dead. You look like hell, she said, which was compassion in her language. Thanks, he said. She debriefed him by the window. He showed her the motion alerts. She forwarded them to a digital forensics tech. I ran the ring image last night, she said low. Preliminary match to a fraternal order. Private, old, selective. Their members overlap with certain foundations and boards. I'm not naming it yet. I need more. Rich men playing medieval, Ethan said. Rich men playing medieval with modern lawyers, she corrected. And possibly worse. She hesitated. The first missing person, her name is Naomi Lee, 26. Master's student. Last seen near a gala fundraiser 2 blocks from where you took the photo. Gala, he repeated. The word didn't fit in his mouth. The second is a woman named Gabriela Duarte, 31. Waitress. Took an extra shift, never came home. Her phone last pinged near Midtown West. Laura's eyes were steady. Neither of them had reason to vanish. Neither of them had mental health flags or debts that would make them run. I'm not saying your photo is them, but I'm not ruling it out. Ethan swallowed the sudden ache behind his eyes. If that man in the park was part of this, if he's in that order, then I put my head up too high. Then keep it low, she said. I want to pull CCTV near the alley. It won't be perfect. The timeline is tight, and rain ruins footage. But we try. Put me to work, he said. I can help scrub frames. Absolutely not, she said automatically, but then she saw his face, and something yielded. Fine. Carefully. On my system. In the precinct. We don't move this to your devices. Understood? He nodded. It felt like consenting to a medical procedure. At the precinct, a fluorescent world, they sat at a workstation and pulled camera feeds from 3 blocks, each as glamorous as oatmeal. Rain made blossoms of the streetlights. People blurred into gray pencils. They ran quick filters to sharpen edges, to find the shape of a body in wet light. 2 hours into the scrub, Laura tapped her nail on the screen. There, she said. A figure ducked into the alley 6 minutes before Ethan's shutter clicked. A second figure followed half a minute later. The angles blocked faces and details. But one thing flashed clear when the first figure's hand came up under a streetlight. Briefly, a ring bright as a small moon on his finger. Ethan felt his spine go cold. That's him. Laura did not answer with triumph. She answered with the weariness of someone who knew a door had opened that could not be closed. We need a name to attach to that ring, she said. A face that matches a record that matches a movement pattern. Then we need probable cause to search. Then we need to find Naomi and Gabriella, or a body, or, which I prefer, live witnesses. They returned to the apartment after midday, wrapped in a silence that wasn't unfriendly. The camera on the fire escape had captured nothing new. The forum thread had been locked. Laura had pulled rank with the moderators under a vaguely worded, ongoing investigation pretense. His anonymous DMer was offline. Rest, she told him. I'm running down a lead on the ring. Keep your phone on. Answer only my calls. If anyone else reaches out, including that man, do not engage. He promised. She left. He did not rest. He tried. The clock dragged its heels. He took a long shower. He made another coffee that tasted like tin and nerves. He cleaned his camera lens, then cleaned it again. He moved prints around on the wall the way some men moved books in a crisis. As dusk staggered back in, the wind rose and clattered something on the roof. Ethan was sitting on the floor with his back against the couch when the apartment dimmed. For a second, he thought a cloud had dragged itself over the city. Then he realized the lights had gone out. He stood, heart tight. The streetlights outside still burned. His building had gone dead. He reached for his phone. No service. He stared at the bars. They held, empty. He stepped to the door and set his ear to it. The hallway made the hollow sound of a seashell. Quiet, not quiet. He slid the chain and cracked the door open an inch. 2 floors down, someone laughed. The sound slithered and then was gone. He shut the door, turned the lock, set the chain, set the bolt, the theater of safety. He moved to the window, peered out. The opposite building's windows made dark rectangles. Then, in one of them, a rectangle glowed to life. Hands closed around the sill. A face leaned there, very still, looking not at the street but up, directly toward Ethan's window. He stepped back on reflex. The face didn't move. It wasn't the man from the park. This person was older, with a furrow carved into the brow like a habit. He wore no expression, had no umbrella or pretense, just a watching. Ethan's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. You should have listened. What do you want? Ethan typed before he could stop himself. The dots appeared and vanished, reappeared and vanished. Finally, proof that warnings aren't idle. The lights in his apartment came back on. Someone in the hallway clapped sarcastically. His phone bars sprang to life. The opposite window went dark. When Ethan looked again, the face was gone. He didn't call Laura. He recorded a voice memo instead, in case the phone lines weren't safe. It's Ethan. Power cut in my building for 5 minutes. Someone was watching from the window across the street. Unknown number texted. Saving screenshots. I'm okay. For the moment. At 2 in the morning, he woke to a soft pop, like a cork eased from a bottle. Silence after. He lay very still and listened. Another pop, faint. He got to his feet and crept to the peephole. A shadow drifted across the hall like a piece of paper. He could not make a shape of it. His phone vibrated. The same unknown number. We're patient, Mr. Cole. Are you? He typed, why me? Dots. Because you looked. Because you saw. Because you pointed. He stared at the words. The men around this thing liked their sentences to feel like ceremonies. He took a breath, so deep it made him shiver. He typed one more question, reckless or necessary. He didn't know. Who is the woman? Dots. A longer pause. Which one? He felt the bottom drop out of the world. He did call Laura then. She answered on the first ring, voice rough with sleep. What? He told her. Everything. The blackout, the face, the texts. The last line. Okay, she said. Pack a bag. You're staying at my place. I can't run, he said, the words bursting out, panicked. If I run, they win. They bury this. They bury her. Them. You're not running. You're not hiding. You're coming somewhere I can protect you long enough to push this through official channels. I'm not asking, Ethan. I'm doing my job. He stood with the phone against his ear, a bag in his hand, his eyes on the window. He remembered the man in the park telling him to photograph puddles and dogs. He remembered Naomi Lee's name and did not know her face. He remembered the alley's silent scream preserved in his memory like frost. Okay, he said. I'm coming. He packed what mattered. The Leica, 2 hard drives, a handful of clothes, a photo his mother had taped to his childhood wall of him at 5 holding a plastic point-and-shoot. He slung the bag over his shoulder and opened the door. A white envelope lay on the doormat, neat as a note from a neighbor apologizing for a party. His name was typed on it in a font so clean it felt surgical. He stared at it for a heartbeat and then, for once, let the training of fear overrule curiosity. He did not pick it up. He took a photo of it from 3 angles with his phone. Then he called Laura and said, "There's an envelope. On my mat." "Don't touch it," she said. "I'm coming up." He stood in the doorway and watched the envelope the way he would watch an animal that might be sleeping or playing dead. He heard Laura's fast steps on the stairs. She came into view with a latex glove already half on. She bent, slipped on the other, and lifted the flap with the kind of care reserved for explosives and test results. Inside lay a single print. His own photo. The reflection. The man's hand on the woman's throat. Someone had adjusted the levels to make the ring bright as a confession. Across the bottom margin, in crisp ink, a message was written in the same neat type. "This is your last warning." Laura slipped the print back into the envelope and sealed it. Her jaw had locked into a line he recognized from the times she'd stood over bodies vowing, wordlessly, to hurt the world that made them. "You're coming with me," she said. He nodded. He looked past her to the stairwell, the shadows stacked like folded linens, and thought he saw the weight of a gaze there. He held that feeling like a compass the whole way down, like a needle pointing toward a storm. Outside, the city had gone back to pretending it was ordinary. Delivery bikes hummed. A bus sighed. Somewhere a bar threw out the night's ghosts. As they crossed the street to her unmarked sedan, Ethan glanced up on instinct at the opposite building. The dark window from before held nothing. A beat later, a light flicked on 2 floors up. A silhouette moved, then vanished. He buckled in, the seat belt cutting a diagonal across his chest like a sash. Laura started the car. "We're going to move fast," she said. "I'll get the envelope to forensics. I'll get the number traced, though it'll be a burner chased through smoke. And the ring, if it's what I think it is, will open doors." "Which doors?" he asked. "The kind with smiling guards," she said. "The kind that hate cameras." They pulled into traffic. The city flowed around them, indifferent and alive. Ethan watched the rearview mirror the way you watch a horizon when you're sure the weather is coming for you. The warning had arrived wrapped in politeness, delivered with electrical demonstrations, scrawled on a photograph of a moment the world wanted to pretend was rain and angles. He had been told to stop. He had been shown there were consequences for looking. He had been offered the safety of ignorance. He had refused it. He pressed his palm flat against the hard case of his Leica on his lap. The camera had always made him feel brave, or if not brave, then capable, like a man permitted to stand a little closer to the pulse of the world. Now it felt like a weapon and a target at once. He closed his eyes and saw the hand again, the ring a moon, the throat ashore where waves broke and broke and broke. This was his last warning. He did not intend to listen. Laura's apartment in Queens was a fortress disguised as a shoebox. From the street, it looked like every other tired 3-story brick building. But inside, her unit was wired like a command post. Deadbolts, reinforced hinges, locks on windows, and a paranoid number of motion sensors. Ethan had been here once years ago for beers after a gallery opening, and even then he'd joked that her paranoia was showing. Now, paranoia felt like oxygen. He sat hunched on her couch, clutching his camera bag like a life preserver, while Laura moved briskly around the space. She shed her coat, peeled off gloves, and locked the door behind her with an efficiency that seemed rehearsed. Then she dropped the envelope containing the warning print into a fireproof lockbox by her desk. "You'll sleep here," she said, tossing a pillow and blanket onto the couch. "You'll eat here. You'll stay off your phone unless I tell you otherwise. You'll use my Wi-Fi only when I say it's safe. Understand?" "Understood," Ethan said. His voice sounded small in the room. He cleared his throat. "What do we do now?" Laura poured herself coffee, black and brutal. She drank half before answering. "Now we figure out who we're up against. That ring, that's the key. I ran it against an internal database. Got a hit. The symbol matches a crest tied to a fraternal order called the Societas Lux. Ever heard of it?" "No," Ethan said. The name tasted strange, like expensive wine. "Sounds like a brand of cologne." Laura gave a humorless smile. "They've been around for decades. Maybe longer. Rich, insular, connected. Officially, they're a philanthropic club. Lots of charity galas, scholarships, foundations. Unofficially, well, rumors. Influence trading. Secret meetings. Whispers about trafficking. The kind of shadows that never get confirmed because no one with evidence lives long enough to testify." Ethan's stomach dropped. "And you think they're behind Naomi Lee and Gabriela Duarte?" "I think the possibility is strong," Laura said. "Both women fit a profile. Young, striking, ambitious. Both disappeared near events tied to Lux donors. And now you've got a photo of a man wearing their crest while attacking a woman. Coincidence doesn't stretch that far." Ethan pressed his palms together, hard enough to make the joints ache. "So what happens when I have the only photo?" "You become a liability," Laura said flatly. "And a target, which you already are." Silence stretched. Outside, traffic hissed along wet asphalt. A siren wailed somewhere distant. Ethan tried to picture the man from the park, umbrella balanced, voice calm as he threatened to break Ethan's hands. He wondered if that man was one of them. Lux. The thought made Bao rise. Laura pulled a folder from her desk and dropped it onto the coffee table. Inside were photos of Naomi and Gabriela, smiling faces clipped from IDs and family albums. Ethan looked at them and felt the photo in his camera like a shard under his skin. He didn't know if the woman in his shot was either of them, but he knew she was someone. Someone who deserved to be seen, not erased. "I need you to back me up," Laura said, pulling him back. "We're going to dig. I'll run the official channels. You keep your eyes open. You've got instincts, Ethan. You see what others miss. That's why this photo even exists. Instincts." The word burned. Instincts had dragged him into this. The next day, Laura took Ethan to the precinct under pretense of consulting on an unrelated case. They ducked into a secure evidence room where she had pulled surveillance stills from 3 different missing persons investigations, including Naomi and Gabriela. Each showed women at parties, bars, sidewalks, faces blurred in motion, captured in low-res security footage. But one detail was clear. In 2 separate photos, background men wore rings. Thick bands. Crest faintly visible. Ethan leaned over the table, pulse racing. "That's the same symbol." Laura nodded. "I can't take this to my captain yet. It's circumstantial, but it's a thread. You keep tugging. Maybe the whole thing unravels." Ethan's eyes drifted to a grainy image of Naomi stepping out of a cab. Behind her, a suited man was holding the door. On his hand, again, the ring. Ethan snapped photos of the stills with his Leica before Laura could protest. "Every record counts," he muttered. "If they're erasing things digitally, I'll keep them analog." Laura gave him a sharp look, but didn't stop him. That night, back at Laura's apartment, Ethan couldn't sleep. The city outside throbbed with restless energy, but inside the room felt coffin still. He tossed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, until a thought dragged him upright. What if the photo I took isn't unique? What if someone else saw something too, and stayed quiet? He padded to the desk, opened his laptop on Laura's network. Against his better judgment, he dove back into the forum thread. It was locked, yes, but people were still whispering. Private messages. New accounts referencing the alley pic. One anonymous user had posted before the lock. "This isn't the first time Lux has been sloppy. Look for Midtown West, May 2021. Ethan's pulse spiked. He Googled. Buried in archives, he found a news brief. Unidentified woman's body found near construction site. Cause of death undetermined. No suspects. Case cold. No follow-up. No coverage. Just silence. He saved the page as PDF, printed it on Laura's clunky home printer. The smell of ink filled the room. He stared at the paper until the words blurred. Behind him, Laura stirred from her bedroom. Couldn't sleep, she murmured. He shook his head. They've done this before. Laura looked at the printout, eyes hard. I know. She sighed. I've been chasing ghosts for years, Ethan. Always scraps, whispers. You might have just given us the first piece of concrete evidence. But that means they won't stop until it's gone. He thought about the envelope on his doormat. About the blackout. About the face in the opposite window. They weren't just trying to scare him. They were testing him. Probing defenses. Waiting for him to crack. 2 days later, proof came in violence. Ethan was walking back from a bodega run. Milk, bread, cigarettes for Laura, when the world jolted sideways. A shadow detached itself from an alley. A hand shoved him hard. He staggered into a brick wall, pain sparking behind his eyes. Another hand wrenched at his camera bag. Instinct flared. Ethan twisted, clutching the strap. No. The word tore out of him raw. The attacker, hood up, face masked, punched him in the ribs. Ethan gasped but didn't let go. He slammed his shoulder into the man, enough to stagger him back. For a split second the streetlight caught the attacker's hand. A ring glinted. Adrenaline surged. Ethan jammed his knee into the man's thigh and ripped the bag free. He stumbled backward, clutching it. The man recovered fast, stepping forward with a knife in hand. Short, sharp, efficient. Ethan's heart thundered. Headlights washed across the block. Laura's unmarked sedan screeched around the corner. Siren wailing. The attacker froze, then bolted into the shadows. Laura leapt out, gun drawn, eyes blazing. Ethan, you okay? He wheezed, pressing his side. Ribs might be cracked. But yeah. Laura scanned the alley, but the attacker was gone. She cursed viciously and shoved her gun back into its holster. Then she turned on Ethan. What the hell were you doing alone? I just food. I thought it'd be safe. Safe? Laura snapped. There's no safe anymore. Not until this is over. You don't walk out that door without me. Ethan sagged against the car, trembling. The image of the ring seared into his mind again. It was them. Lux. It has to be. Laura's jaw clenched. She put a hand on his shoulder, not gentle, but grounding. Then we're closer than they want us to be. Back at her apartment, Ethan sat while Laura patched his bruised ribs. Each press made him hiss. But the pain was secondary to the storm in his mind. He could still feel the attacker's hand ripping at his bag. If he'd lost the camera, if he hadn't fought, everything might have vanished. They're escalating, Laura muttered, taping gauze. First warnings. Now direct assault. They want your photo destroyed more than anything. That tells us it's dangerous. That tells us it's real. And that they won't stop, Ethan said hoarsely. No, Laura agreed. She finished the patch, sat back. Which means neither can we. For the first time, Ethan didn't just feel afraid. He felt angry. His photo had always been about truth, capturing the city raw, unposed. And now the truth had teeth. They think I'll give up, he whispered. But I won't. Laura met his eyes. Good. Because if we play this right, your photo isn't just proof. It's bait. Laura's kitchen table became a war room. A city map lay flattened beneath coffee rings and notebooks. Yellow sticky notes colonized its edges. Names, dates, addresses, arrows that looped back like bad habits. On the wall over the sink, she had tacked printouts of the ring from different angles. Ethan's photo, the CCTV still, an archival shot she'd yanked from some charity gala page and ruthlessly zoomed until the pixels complained. Each image made the same quiet promise. We're real. Bait has to be something only you would have, Laura said, tapping her pen against the table. Something they can't resist. Something that makes them move. The photo, Ethan said. Not the one they've already seen, Laura countered. They think they've squeezed you down to one image and some bravado. We need to convince them you have more. Much more. Ethan thought of his archives. The years of images that had taught him how to see. He thought of Naomi and Gabriella, of the anonymous body near a construction site. He thought of the man in the park telling him to go back to dogs and puddles. What if I did, he said slowly. What if I had more? Laura's mouth tipped at one corner. We're about to make them believe you do. She slid a tablet toward him. The screen showed an anonymous posting board nestled behind layers of invite-only walls. A place where rich men waited in half-legal commerce and pretended they were gods at a private pond. It wasn't exactly dark web sorcery, but you didn't find it by accident. Laura had found it because she had spent a decade following slime trails most people ignored. You'll use a new handle, one that suggests you're connected to the photography world but not obviously you, she said. You'll post a teaser image, just enough to hint at the ring in the alley, but from a supposedly different angle. You'll caption it with a breadcrumb, mention a time, a location, not quite right. You'll suggest you have a series. And you'll solicit a private buyer. Entrapment? Ethan said. Phishing, Laura said. We're not selling them anything except the rope they'll tie around their own necks. He looked at the tablet. The idea made his stomach pitch, but it also lit something behind his ribs, a reckless, defiant spark. What if they don't bite? They will, Laura said. They can't afford not to. And if they do? Ethan asked. Then we arrange a meet, Laura said. And I bring the rest. The rest? My team, she said. Or at least the ones I can trust. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You don't trust your department? I trust people, she said. Not institutions. Institutions hate the embarrassment of losing to men who donate wings to hospitals. She stood and paced, the motion of a thought gathering speed. We'll choose a location with multiple exits, poor sight lines for anyone trying to snipe us, and enough ambient noise to keep us from being overheard. We'll wire you with a mic that bounces to an off-site recorder. We won't carry the original of anything. We'll bring replicas convincing enough to make a billionaire cry. Deeply satisfying, Ethan murmured. And dangerous, she added. He nodded. I figured. They spent the afternoon crafting the trap. Ethan created a composite from the frames he'd shot around the original alley. Brick textures, a sliver of neon, the ghost of the ring implied in reflection without giving away the exact geometry of his shot. He dialed the contrast until the shapes teased the mind into filling gaps. He let the rain smear things into meaning. He titled the post Study in Glass, Series Preview, and let the caption read, Limited proofs available for serious collectors. Unique angles captured near Midtown West, 217, message for verification. It was not a lie, not exactly. It was not the truth either. It was bait, honest about its appetite. Within 2 hours, messages arrived. Most were the usual bottom feeders, people offering exposure instead of money, or money instead of safety. One handle wrote, I represent a client interested in exclusivity. Do you guarantee none of these images exist elsewhere? Another, how many frames? How many faces? Ethan's pulse climbed with each ping. Laura read over his shoulder, expression remote. Look for the ones who don't haggle, she said. The ones who ask about destruction clauses. An account with the innocuous name, Playback Consult, messaged at 7:13 p.m. We can meet. Bring proofs. We'll bring a certification of destruction upon purchase. Attached was an address in the meatpacking district, an old warehouse space disguised as a co-working event venue. A time, 11 p.m. A final line, our client appreciates discretion. Too on the nose, Laura said. They're pushing you to a box they control. Ethan tasted metal. So we don't go? We go, Laura said. But we pick the door. She called 2 people in quick succession. One was a forensics tech with tired eyes and a spine made of stubbornness. The other was a patrol sergeant with a good marriage and nothing left to lose in his career because he didn't plan to climb any farther. Their responses were short and loyal. They met Laura and Ethan in the precinct garage at 9:30 p.m., where the concrete smelled like gasoline and rain and the air hummed with fluorescent fatigue. Laura laid out roles like distributing parts in a ritual. The forensics tech, Asha, would handle the off-site recorder and the live feed from Ethan's wire. The patrol sergeant, Dom, would be the muscle who wasn't supposed to be muscle. Laura herself would stay outside the meet, mobile, able to intervene or pull Ethan out. A fourth person, a plainclothes detective named Reggie with a poker face, would blend into the street near the venue's side exit. In Ethan's bag, 5 proofs, printed on thick paper with convincing watermarks and invisible tracer dust that would glow under a very specific spectrum of light. Along with them, a decoy hard drive labeled with a photographer's pretentious scrawl, Study in Glass _master_01. And the real files? Asha asked. Laura and Ethan answered in chorus. Not coming. Ethan tucked the wire beneath his shirt. Asha taped the transmitter against his skin, cold through the adhesive. Check, check, she said into her headset. listening for his voice in the closed loop. Say something normal. This feels like a movie, Ethan said. Say something boring, Asha said. Municipal bond yields are inversely correlated to. Perfect, she snorted. They drove 2 cars, Laura with Asha, Ethan with Dom. The city had wrung itself dry and come up damp again, lights smearing on the pavement. The warehouse stood on a street that had been fashionable 10 years ago, the kind of place that now hosted charity pop-ups and brand experiences where influencers pretended to have experiences. Tonight it wore a blank face. Dom parked 2 blocks away. I'll be around the corner, he said. If someone sneezes wrong, I'm in. Ethan nodded, swallowed. His mouth had the cottony taste of fear. He slung his bag. Laura's voice came through the tiny earpiece Asha had hooked him with. I've got you, she said. In and out. Don't improvise unless you have to. No hero noises. No hero noises, he echoed. He walked toward the warehouse. The door opened as he approached, as if whoever had been watching the cameras appreciated punctuality. A man in a blazer that tried to look casual stepped aside, gesture smooth. No ring. Ethan filed that detail away, useless but comforting. The corridor beyond was dim, industrial chic. On the far end, an open space spread out with couches and high tables like a permanent afterparty for a party that never ended. 2 men waited near the middle. One wore the kind of suit that declared billable hours. The other looked like a banker had dreamed of becoming a spy and stopped at wardrobe. Between them, on a table, sat a steel case the size of a suitcase. A third person stood slightly apart, a woman in black with a tablet, hair pulled back so tight her thoughts must have been straight, too. Mr. Cole, the suit said, smiling with the actorly sincerity of a man who owns his teeth. Thank you for meeting us. Your message implied urgency, Ethan said, hating how his voice snagged on urgency. We're simple art lovers, the banker spy said. We appreciate the ephemeral, the kind of work that shouldn't be mass-produced. Ethan set his bag on the table. He did not sit. He unzipped the bag with hands he forced to be slow, deliberate. He laid out the 5 proofs one by one, like tarot cards. Each showed an angle of wet brick and neon suggestion. Each hinted at the ring's presence. None were the shot. The woman in black leaned in, tablet camera sweeping. Ethan felt the hair on his arms lift. No photos, he said, keeping his tone light. These aren't meant to travel. Just confirming quality for our client, she said. Her voice was frictionless. And your client is? Ethan asked. Discreet, the suit said. As are you. So discreet that if this leaks, people get hurt, Ethan said. Is that a threat? Banker spy asked, just curious enough that the question could be filed either way. A statement, Ethan said. On the sidewalk, Laura paced. Asha kept her eyes on the feed levels, fingers on the recorder. Sound is clean, Asha murmured. No second room chatter. Either they're really careful or this is a lightweight team. I don't like lightweight, Laura said. Lightweight means either amateur hour or the tip of a spear. Inside, the suit tapped the steel case. Our client is prepared to offer compensation commensurate with the uniqueness of your work, he said, along with a legal document certifying the destruction of any additional copies after transfer. Not interested in destruction, Ethan said. I'm interested in control. Control, banker spy said. Such a lovely word. He slid the steel case open. Inside lay bundles of cash tidy as new towels, and a sleek device nestling like a pet snake. A portable shredder designed for hard drives. We understand art's dangerous appetite, he said softly. We feed it. Ethan's pulse was a drum. He thought of Naomi and Gabriella and the other woman with no name. He let rage harden the cartilage of his fear. You think I brought the only copies? He asked. We think you're smart, the woman in black said, and Ethan caught the edge of that sentence. And we think we can make you act dumb. We think you care about the safety of the people around you. We think you don't want to spend your life checking over your shoulder. We think a clean break is good for everyone. Everyone, Ethan repeated. Even the woman in the alley? Her face did not move. That photo is an illusion constructed by glass and rain, she said gently. It would be a tragedy to mistake poetry for evidence. Laura swore low. They're trying to gaslight him into the shredder. His vitals spiked. Asha murmured. Reggie's status? Reggie's voice crackled from a second channel. Side alley is quiet. 2 smokers. 1 camera. No third-party movement. I want eyes on the roof, Laura said. Dom, float 1 block north. We might need a tail if they move him. Copy, Dom said. Inside, the suit slid a sheet across the table. Sign, and we all exhale. Ethan looked down. The document's language had been sanded smooth by law. It indemnified and reassured and promised, in long words, to erase. He could feel the transmitter's tape tug his skin when he swallowed. Before I sign, he said, buying seconds, I want my client, me, to feel like this is a fair exchange. Let me see the certification. Let me see the process. Of course, Banker Spy said, with a smile that said we rehearsed this. He lifted the shredder from the case and set it on the table. You place the drive. We confirm. You watch the display countdown. Then we both sign, and you walk away with enough leverage to start that long-deferred book. Ethan took the decoy drive from his bag. He held it like it had a pulse. What happens if I walk now without signing? He asked. The room did a small thing. It cooled. The suit's smile was still there, but distant. The woman in black flicked her eyes toward the door and back, a glance so quick it might have been a blink. The Banker Spy's hand drifted, just casually, to rest near the steel case's lid. We'd be disappointed, the suit said. Our client would be disappointed. Disappointments have ripple effects. Like blackouts? Ethan asked. His voice steadied on anger. Like little notes slipped under doors? The woman in black watched him like a teacher who knows which student will bolt. You have enemies you didn't know existed, she said mild. Let us remove one category of enemy from your life. Consider it philanthropy. He almost laughed. Philanthropy. He thought of hospitals with names on wings. Show me, he said, and slid the decoy drive toward the shredder. On the sidewalk, Laura stopped pacing as if someone had pressed pause. He's moving to shred, she said. Asha? Signal's good, Asha said. Recorder's capturing. We'll get serials off the shredder after if we can. Dom, you ready if this goes sideways? I'm parked crooked, Dom said. Born ready. Ethan set the drive into the maw. The machine chirped, eager. A digital display blinked to life. The Banker Spy pressed a button and the drive disappeared with a hungry hum. See, he said. Simple. Safe. Clean. The machine ticked down. Ethan leaned in as if fascinated, and in that inch the air told him a secret. He was not alone in this room. It wasn't a sound or a shadow. It was the way breath moves when someone is holding theirs. He turned his head slightly and caught it, a shape above the mezzanine, barely a silhouette against darker dark. A man with a rifle, patient as mathematics. Laura, he said without moving his lips. We see it, she said, voice suddenly so calm it was blue. Reggie? Got him, Reggie said. Rooftop angle through the skylight. He's ours if he moves. No good, Laura said. If he fires once, we don't get a second try. Ethan, do not flinch. Do not look up again. Keep them talking. Ethan's mouth went dry. He straightened. The suit and Banker Spy smiled like nothing had shifted. Of course they knew. Of course they had their insurance policy tucked into the rafters. What about the woman in the alley? He asked, and the question came out more savage than he planned. You said the photo was poetry. If it's poetry, why send men with knives? The Banker Spy's smile loosened a fraction, enough to show the boredom beneath. Artists can be dramatic, he said. We respond in kind. The shredder beeped. The display read, destroyed. The woman in black slid the certification forward with a stylus. Your turn, she said, because every game needs the illusion of fairness. Ethan took the stylus. Laura's voice threaded into his ear. Walk, she said. We have what we need. You don't sign. You don't argue. You walk. He set the stylus down. I keep the proofs, he said calmly. Of course, the suit lied. We've already captured what we wanted. I figured, Ethan said. He zipped the bag, slow, robotic. He lifted it. He turned. The room exhaled in a way most people wouldn't hear. Ethan heard it because he had spent his adult life catching microchanges in human weather. He took a step, and the mezzanine man shifted, barely, the way a cat's tail moves right before it pounces. Now, Laura said. Reggie's voice cracked. Contact. The lights dropped out of the warehouse like a curtain. Someone shouted. Someone else swore. The rifle coughed once, and a light fixture above Ethan exploded into raining glass that sounded like a hard storm. He dove behind the couch, heat streaking his cheek where a sliver nicked skin. The bag clamped to his chest. Dom hit the door from the street the way a wave hits a piling. He crashed through as if the building had offended him personally. Police, he roared. and the word had a shape that made people's hands remember they didn't want to hold guns. The banker spy went low. The suit ducked behind the steel case. The woman in black already had a taser in her hand, moving with lazy grace toward the place Ethan had been standing, like she knew where he'd be in 2 breaths. Laura's silhouette cut through the doorway like the point of a spear. She moved under the mezzanine with an instinctive sweep and fired at the rafters. The rifleman jerked back, cursed. Reggie's shot cracked the air, ricocheted off metal, hissed a warning. The rifle clattered to the mezzanine floor. Then there were boots, the slam of door on the far side, the scuttle of a man becoming absence at speed. "Ethan!" Laura shouted. "Here." She vaulted the couch, grabbed the strap of his bag, dragged him toward the entrance like they were running for a departing train. Dom covered them, brought back a wall that moved. They made it into the corridor, adrenaline slopping over the edges of Ethan's bones. Asha's voice was in his ear. "I've got the whole thing. We're good. We're—" The corridor lights cut. The world did that trick again, shrinking to the size of a throat. A door banged shut, metal on metal. A smell like hot plastic hit them, and the emergency lighting blinked twice then died. A generator somewhere coughed and didn't catch. "Back up," Laura snapped, already turning. "They're corralling us." "Left," Dom said, and shouldered through a service door. They burst into a back stairwell that seemed to climb forever, but also collapse, concrete swallowing echoes. Laura shoved Ethan ahead, boots slamming steps. They hit the second-floor landing when a shadow detached itself from the darkness at the far end. Quick, precise. Ethan saw the glint too late. The taser connected with Dom's side. He jerked, roared, went down on one knee. "Move," Laura barked. She fired twice, controlled, surgical. The shadow withdrew, limping, leaving a smear of breathy profanity. Dom shook the taser prongs from his jacket and hauled himself upright. "I'm good," he grunted, lying but functional. They made the ground-level door. Laura shoved the bar. It didn't move. "Locked," she hissed. Ethan swung his bag like a pendulum and smashed it against the crash bar. Pain shot up his forearms. The bar held. He wanted to scream. Laura holstered her weapon, took 3 steps back, rammed the door with her shoulder. Something snapped. The door opened 3 inches, then 6, then enough. They spilled into an alley that stank of wet cardboard and rich garbage. "Cars around the block," Dom said, breathing hard. "We move." They did. They turned the corner, and the night made a new shape, a cruel one. 2 figures waited at the mouth of the alley like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. The one on the left wore a suit that got along with darkness. The one on the right had a face Ethan recognized in the deep part of his brain that filed danger, a man with a clean smell and an umbrella. The man from the park smiled like they were old friends. The umbrella was absent. His hands were empty. Naked hands are braver weapons. "Good evening," he said. "We're leaving." "Not with him," Laura said, stepping forward. "Especially with him," the man said, and his eyes flicked to Ethan with genuine warmth. "You're the guest of honor." Dom moved to flank. The suited man's hand moved in a blur. Something clanged against the pavement near Dom's feet and burst into a scream of light and sound. Ethan's vision whited out. His ears filled with bees. He stumbled, grabbed for the wall. Hands were on him. Too many. Shoving, pulling, cutting his world into pieces. He felt the bag strap tear across his shoulder. He clutched harder. He lost it. He didn't know. The sounds came through syrup. Laura shouted his name. Dom cursed like a prayer. The world rolled. When sight returned, it came in pains. A van door slammed. Tires squealed. Dom's shape lunged into the street, arm raised, too late. Laura's silhouette was gone. "Laura!" Ethan's voice cracked the way glass does when it's heated too fast. Dom grabbed him by both shoulders. "They took her," he said, and the words had edges. "They took her." Ethan stood in the alley with light leaking down the walls like the last patience of a saint, and everything he had built as a safe story in his head collapsed. The plan had been surgical. The plan had been careful. The plan had been not enough. Asha's voice sliced in, frantic. "I lost Laura's mic. I had her, and then a burst of interference, and now, nothing." "Ethan, are you okay?" "Dom." "Standing," Dom said. He sounded like a door, trying not to break. "They flashbanged us," took Laura. 2, maybe 3 men. Blue panel van, plates possibly fake. "Westbound." "Reggie." Asha demanded. "Static." Then Reggie. I'm on a motorcycle. Tail for as long as I can. They're riding like they steal highways. Ethan felt something inside him harden into a shape he didn't recognize. A thing with corners and a center of gravity, so dense it bent the air. We go, he said. Dom looked at him. For a moment, the older man seemed ready to cuff him to a pipe for his own good. Then he nodded once, sharp. We go? They sprinted for Dom's sedan. The city folded open like a map of risk. Traffic was sinful for this hour. Lights kept turning the wrong color. Dom drove like rage had a license. Ethan kept his eyes on the barely visible tail of a van 2 blocks ahead. Maybe a ghost offered by the city to keep hope breathing. Asha shouted directions in their ears, pulling traffic cameras and dot connecting in real time. Left on Washington, she said. They cut through. Reggie? 3 cars ahead, Reggie panted. If we lose them at the tunnel. They won't go through, Asha snapped. Too many cameras, too many state cops. They'll want a private place. Waterfront, maybe. Warehouse, Ethan said, almost to himself. Back where we started, but worse. Dom swerved, tires protesting. The van ahead flicked right, then left, dancing with rules. Sirens drifted from nowhere, for someone else's misery. The city smirked. They followed the van to the river, to a road that had forgotten it had ever been loved by people with strollers. The van slowed, signaled with the politeness of a liar, and turned into a lot fenced with chain link. Reggie cut his lights and glided past on the motorcycle like a shadow that had lost its source. 2 guards, Reggie whispered. 1 at the gate, 1 at the loading dock. No visible rifles. Might be more inside. Police? Asha asked, the word packed with layers of risk. Not yet, Dom said. If we call now, we scare them into a hole. Or we scare them into killing her. Ethan said, and the words made the air change pressure. Silence took a breath. Dom parked in a dead zone of streetlight where the sedan became an idea. He turned to Ethan. You don't go in, he said. I go. Reggie goes. You stay here, and you do not play hero. Ethan shook his head before the sentence finished. They took her because of me, he said. I'm not staying in the car like a dog ashamed of a mess. Dom hesitated. You'll follow orders. I'll follow Laura, Ethan said. The river made a sound like a long secret telling itself to the dark. Reggie rolled back on the bike, killed the engine, set his helmet on the seat like a head that would be needed later. We're burning minutes, he said. Pick a door. They picked the loading dock. They went in thin and quiet, knives of light slashing their eyes into narrow comfort. The warehouse smelled like rope and solvent. Voices drifted from deeper in, male, amused, the sound predators make when the prey is tied and the story is almost written. Ethan moved soft. The Leica in his bag knocked his hip, a familiar ache. He kept one hand on the strap as if it were a talisman that would get him through the underworld. They reached an interior room, and the world snapped into relief. Laura sat bound to a chair under a single hanging bulb that drew a circle of ugly around her. Blood had made tidy paths down one side of her face. She looked very awake. 2 men stood before her. One was the man from the park, umbrella-less, patient. The other wore the ring. Openly, proudly, the crest grinning in the light. He had the bland face of a man whose life had taught him that consequences were for other people. Detective, the ringed man said, almost fond. You have been a pebble in our shoe. Laura spat blood at his polished shoes. Good, she said. Ethan saw red flare at the edges of his sight. He pressed back against the support column because if he didn't he would walk into the light and the bullet that waited there for him. The man from the park lifted his hand. Mr. Cole, he said conversationally, without looking toward the shadows. If you're here, and I assume you are, because art is so sentimental, please do not ruin the end of our evening. We only want the one thing you continue to misunderstand, the negative. Ethan felt the Leica in his bag like a heartbeat. The negative, the original, did not exist, not in the way they meant. He had shot digital, but he understood what they wanted. The core, the seed, the file that could grow into a trial. You know I can't give you that, Laura said, voice rough. Even if I wanted to. He won't. Then he'll bury you with it, the ringed man said gently, as if offering sympathy. Dom shifted, a shadow peeling from shadow. Reggie ghosted along the wall. They were good. Ethan knew they were good. He also knew good didn't always cash out against careful evil. The man from the park sighed. He looked tired, and the performance of that tiredness made Ethan want to break all his teeth. "Detective Martinez," he said, "you're a credit to a profession that used to have ethics. This could have ended simple. It will end complicated." Laura smiled, blood on her teeth like the lacquer on a violin. "Complicated's my love language." Reggie flashed fingers at Dom. 2, then 1, then 0 move. Dom threw something small and round into the room. It hissed instead of screamed, and the hissing filled the air with a glitter of powder that made the bulb's light behave like a drunken star. The men coughed. Eyes watered. The ringed man cursed like a regular man for once. Ethan moved. He didn't decide to. Movement picked him up and wore him. He slid low to Laura, knife out to the rope at her wrists. She looked at him, the flare of anger replaced by a flash of something like pride. "You're an idiot," she said, voice soft. "Later," he said, and sawed. The rope gave. She stood in a single motion that hurt to watch and made him feel the world was a thing he could believe in. The man from the park swung, blind for a breath. His fist found Ethan's shoulder and made electricity there. Dom hit the ringed man in the ribs with the kind of punch that resolves theological debates. Reggie moved like choreography, stepped into the space between gun and target, took the gun, made it his. Screaming tires outside. Back up for them. Back up for the enemy. In that second, Ethan didn't know. He heard Asha in his ear, tiny and far, unit en route. 2 minutes. Hold. 2 minutes is a long time when lives are being measured in seconds. The man from the park stumbled backward into the light, and for the first time his face broke. He looked ordinary, worse than ordinary. He looked unremarkable. It was a mask he wore even better than the pleasant one. He recovered the mask and met Ethan's eyes. "This doesn't end because you're brave," he said. "It ends because we decide it does." "Not tonight," Laura coughed. The ringed man lunged toward a side door. Dom caught him by the jacket and held him the way a river holds a stone. Reggie pivoted, weapon trained on the man from the park, whose hands were lovely and empty. Ethan grabbed the back of Laura's arm, anchoring them both. They moved, a small, battered constellation, toward the loading dock exit. The night opened its mouth and howled in the shape of sirens that were finally theirs. They made it 4 steps before another door banged open and 3 men in masks flooded the room like a correction. Everything tiptoed on the edge of avalanche. Laura shoved Ethan to the floor and covered him with her own body. Dom met the first mask with a baton swung like a promise. Reggie fired once into the ceiling, plaster rained. The men hesitated. 1 heartbeat, 2. Calculating risk with abacuses that had never had to count like this. Then the first squad car hit the lot, so hard it bounced. Red and blue ate the edges of the world. A loudspeaker made declarations that sounded like thunder trying out for a play. The masked men became math problems that didn't balance. They ran. "Go," Laura hissed, dragging Ethan. "Now, before the math changes again." They went. They stumbled into the night and into the blunt, silly safety of uniformed officers with rules in their mouths. Asha ran toward them with the recorder clutched to her ribs like a baby. She saw Laura's blood and made a noise that had no professional equivalent. Ethan stood under the pulsing lights, shaking with delayed reaction. He reached for his bag to confirm it was still there, and in that move, a small, inevitable move, he felt the emptiness. The bag was light. Somewhere in the chaos, maybe in the alley with the flashbang, maybe in the stairwell, maybe when he had shielded Laura, someone had cut the seam and slipped out the proofs and the decoy drive. His hand found only air, canvas, the useless weight of nothing. He turned to Laura, throat raw. She read his face, closed her eyes for 1 brutal second, then opened them again. "They got your bait," she said. "Not the hook. They took you," he said. His voice broke like the first time a boy tries to lie with a man's gravity. "They took you. And you came," she said. "You always come. That's why they're afraid." A paramedic nudged his shoulder. "You're bleeding," the paramedic said, and Ethan looked down like the body belonged to someone who owed him rent. Blood striped his arm in artsy lines. "I'll be all right," he said, which was ridiculous and true. Dom strode over, face gray with exhaustion and rage. "One in custody," he said, jerking his head toward the ringed man, now handcuffed and furious on the concrete. "The other ghosted. We'll peel him off the wall another night." The ringed man looked up at Ethan with an expression that mistook contempt for dignity. "You think this matters?" he asked, tone conversational as a brunch invite. You think one photo, one detective, one waiter with a camera can stick a spoke in a wheel that's been turning for a century? Ethan stepped closer until the officer handling the man murmured a warning. He kept his voice low. I think a spoke doesn't stop a wheel, he said. It breaks a bone. Laura laughed once, a painful sound that managed to be joy. Get in the ambulance, idiot, she said, and Ethan did because sometimes love sounds like orders. As they rolled away, the city leaned its wet cheek against the glass of the ambulance window. Ethan lay on the gurney with his bag on his chest like a faithful animal and stared at the fluorescent ceiling. He felt empty and filled, wrecked and ready. The trap had worked and failed. They had taken a piece of the enemy and lost more than they could admit. They had dragged a ringed man into the light and watched the darkness slip around him to form new shapes. He thought of the woman in the alley, the ring bright as a moon, the hand it tied. He thought of Naomi and Gabriella and the unnamed. He thought of the man from the park and his patient threats. He thought of Laura bleeding and smiling. He closed his eyes and saw the photograph again. It was still there, sharp as pain and real as rain. This wasn't over. It was barely beginning. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and overcooked broccoli from the cafeteria below. Ethan hated both smells, but he stayed anyway. Laura lay propped on the bed, her temples stitched with neat black thread. She looked like she'd gone 12 rounds with a heavyweight, yet her eyes still had that sharp detective gleam, the kind that told you she'd cataloged the entire room before you'd finished blinking. You don't have to sit there like a grieving widow, she said, voice hoarse but amused. You don't have to nearly get killed for me. Ethan shot back. Occupational hazard, she said. Then, softer, you did good, Cole. You kept your head. You got me out. Ethan shifted, restless in the cheap plastic chair. They got the bag. Only the fakes, she reminded him. The real one's still yours. He thought of the Leica, hidden in a lockbox beneath the floorboards of his apartment. His chest tightened. For years that camera had been a tool, an extension of his eye. Now it felt like contraband. Across the room, Dom leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. He looked more like a bear than a man, bruises painting his jaw in shades of purple. Our friend in custody won't talk, he grumbled. Lawyered up before the cuffs even clicked. The kind of lawyer that makes captains nervous. Lux takes care of their own, Laura said. They'll stall, obfuscate, probably get him out before arraignment. But we got him on camera. In a warehouse. With a gun. That's leverage. And the others? Ethan asked. Laura's face shadowed. The man with the umbrella vanished. Reggie tailed the van for 3 more blocks before it ghosted. But we rattled them. They'll slip. They always do. Ethan wasn't convinced. Every move so far felt like playing chess against a ghost. No matter how clever your strategy, the opponent didn't follow the rules. But he clung to one truth. The photo. That frozen scream of violence. The ring glinting like a confession. That was the one thing Lux couldn't erase. By the time Laura was discharged, the city had folded into winter's jaws. The river blew icy breath across Manhattan, and the days ended before they had properly begun. Ethan stayed close, half because Laura insisted, half because he couldn't bear to walk alone with the echo of those threats in his ears. At night he dreamed of the woman in the photo, her eyes wide, lips parted. Sometimes she was Naomi, sometimes Gabriella, sometimes a stranger he'd never met. Always, she reached for him, and he could never move fast enough. One afternoon, Asha arrived with her laptop balanced like a shield. She slapped it onto Laura's kitchen table. Got something, she said, grinning despite the exhaustion on her face. Remember the tracer dust on those fake proofs? We embedded it in the ink. Ethan leaned forward, pulse quickening. You can track it? Not GPS track, Asha said. But when the pages get scanned, photographed, or passed under certain scanners, like at airports, secure offices, they leave a signature. Guess what pinged? She turned the screen. An airport security scan, timestamped 12 hours after the warehouse sting. A private jet hangar in Teterboro. Cargo, personal luggage. Inside one bag, faint traces of the dust. They tried to move the proofs, Asha said. Which means Lux isn't done playing. Where was the jet headed? Laura asked. Chicago, Asha said. But we don't know if the papers stayed aboard. Could have been a handoff. Chicago, Ethan repeated. That's halfway across the country. Lux isn't local, Laura said grimly. They're national. Maybe international. But this gives us a line. A trail. 2 nights later, that trail turned bloody. Ethan had taken his camera onto the streets again, hoping the act of framing strangers would calm him. It didn't. Every reflection looked like a trap. Every face might hide a ring. He was shooting the blurred streak of headlights on Houston Street when his phone buzzed. Laura's voice was taut. Ethan, where are you? Downtown, he said. Why? There's been another abduction, she said. Woman in her 20s, grabbed outside a bar near Midtown West. Witness says she was pulled into a black SUV. Same M. Oh, as before. Ethan's knees weakened. Do we know who she is? Not yet. But I've got a feeling Lux is accelerating. Because of me? Ethan whispered. Because of exposure, Laura corrected. Your photo shook them. They're scrambling to cover tracks. That makes them sloppy. Or dangerous, Ethan said. Both, Laura admitted. The breakthrough came the next day, when Dom stormed into Laura's apartment with a grim face and a manila folder. He dropped it on the table. You're going to want to see this. Inside were surveillance stills from a gala held at the Met 3 weeks prior. Wealthy donors smiled for cameras. Champagne glasses glittered. In the background of one frame, Ethan spotted him. The man from the park. The clean-scented, polite menace. He was shaking hands with a city councilman. And on his finger, the ring. Got a name, Dom said. Julian Harrington. Hedge fund money. Big donor to half the city. Board member of 3 charities, including one tied to Lux. Untouchable, officially. But now, he tapped the photo. Now we've got him. Ethan stared at the print until his vision blurred. Harrington's smile looked exactly as it had in the park. Pleasant, empty, lethal. This is it, Ethan said. His voice trembled, but not from fear. From fury. We put him in the frame. We show the world. Laura nodded slowly. Not yet. We need more than a ring and a blurry reflection. We need to catch him in the act. Hard evidence. How? Ethan asked. Laura's eyes cut to him. With your camera. They built a plan reckless enough to work. Harrington was scheduled to attend another gala downtown, a fundraiser for a Lux-affiliated charity. Laura pulled strings, got herself invited undercover. Ethan would pose as an event photographer, blending into the background with his Leica. Dom and Asha would stay mobile outside, ready to intervene. The goal was simple, at least on paper. Get Harrington with Lux associates, capture images of incriminating interactions, maybe even an exchange that tied him to the disappearances. Evidence that couldn't be dismissed as shadows. The night of the gala, Ethan dressed in black, his camera hanging like an anchor. He felt sweat under his collar, but he forced his steps steady. The venue glowed with chandeliers and money. Waiters floated past with trays of champagne. Laughter rang like silver spoons against glass. And then he saw him. Julian Harrington, tall and composed, glass in hand. The ring gleamed as he gestured to another man. A heavy-set donor Ethan didn't recognize. For a moment, their faces leaned close, conspiratorial. Harrington's hand rested on the man's shoulder, casual and intimate. Ethan lifted the Leica. Click. The shutter cut the noise like a blade. For the first time since that night on Broadway, Ethan felt alive. Every angle, every frame, he captured Harrington's movements. The ring glinting, the men whispering, the moments too intimate for philanthropy. Harrington never looked his way. Until he did. Their eyes met across the room. Harrington's smile didn't falter, but his gaze hardened. He lifted his glass in a mock toast. Ethan's blood froze. Laura appeared at his side, murmuring, He saw you. Stay cool. Keep shooting. I think he knows, Ethan whispered. Good, Laura said. Let him. They moved as a pair through the crowd, staying close but not obvious. Harrington drifted toward the exit with his entourage, shaking hands, laughing. Ethan followed, shutter firing in bursts. Each photo another nail. Then, in a split second, the game shifted. One of Harrington's men peeled away from the group and brushed past Ethan. It was deliberate, a shoulder slam hard enough to jolt him. Ethan caught his balance and realized his camera bag felt lighter. He yanked it open. Empty. The Leica was gone. Panic spiked. He spun, searching the crowd. A man in a black suit was slipping through a side door, Ethan's Leica in hand. Laura, Ethan shouted. She spun, saw, swore. Go? Ethan bolted. Through the crowd, through the side door, into the service corridor. His lungs burned, but he kept running. Ahead, the thief darted down a stairwell. Ethan followed, boots slamming metal steps. They burst into a loading dock, cold air knifing in. The thief sprinted toward a waiting SUV. Ethan lunged, grabbed the strap of his own camera. They struggled, bodies slamming against concrete. "Mine!" Ethan roared, ripping at the Leica. The man snarled, tried to twist away. But Ethan had desperation on his side. He wrenched the camera free and stumbled back, chest heaving. The SUV's engine revved. The thief scrambled inside. Tires squealed. The vehicle tore into the night. Ethan clutched the Leica to his chest, shaking. Laura arrived seconds later, gun drawn, Dom behind her. "You got it," she shouted. Ethan nodded, breathless. "I got it." He raised the camera, checked the display. His hand shook so badly he nearly dropped it. But the photos were there, frame after frame of Harrington, the ring, the whispers, the proof. For the first time, Ethan believed they might win. The photos lived on three things: a memory card Laura hid inside an Altoids tin in her freezer, an encrypted drive Asha cloned and tucked under the passenger floor mat of her Civic, and an old-school roll of 35mm film Ethan shot of the Leica's display and then developed in a friend's darkroom at 3 a.m. Red light. Chemical ghosts. He watched Harrington's face surface in the tray like a drowned truth. "This is enough to open doors," Laura said, voice low and even over the drying racks. "Maybe even kick them in." "It won't be enough to keep them open," Asha warned. She'd slept 4 hours in 2 days and moved like someone who'd borrowed time from her future. "They'll argue context and composition. They'll say the ring is decorative, the whispers are philanthropy, the proximity is coincidence. They'll call it art." "It is art," Ethan said, surprising himself. "But it's also evidence. Both can be true." Dom arrived with coffee that tasted like combat and a folder fat with things no one should have to see. "We put a tail on Harrington," he said. "He knows. He's shedding cars like snakeskin. Last seen heading to a private townhouse on the Upper East Side. 2 floors. Discreet security. The kind where a judge also has the code." Laura chewed her lower lip. "If we go through channels, we lose the element of surprise. If we go around them, we lose protection." "Split the difference," Asha said. "We go to someone who hates both corruption and the headlines it brings when it lands on his desk. A.U.S. Attorney with a predilection for crusades. If we can get him proof he can't ignore." "Or," Ethan said, and felt the thought arrive whole, "we put a clock on them." Laura turned to him. "A clock?" "A public one," he said. "We leak a teaser to a journalist who doesn't scare easy. Someone who will publish at noon tomorrow unless they hear from us with a good reason not to. We send enough to make harumphing impossible. Not the full drop, just the frame with the ring and Harrington's face and the man he whispered to. Then we call the U.S. attorney and say, you can either be in front of this or under it." Laura stared at him for a long beat that stretched like a tightrope. "That's reckless." "It's insurance," Ethan said. "You taught me bait." He waited for her to refuse, to remind him he wasn't sworn, wasn't trained, wasn't built for the blast radius. Instead, she looked at the drying photos, at the ring shining like a small moon, and said, "Pick the right journalist." They picked Mara Wolf, a reporter whose work had cost 2 mayors sleep. Laura made the call. Mara listened. No gasp, no performance of shock. She asked 3 surgical questions and sent an encrypted drop link. 30 minutes later, she had the teaser and the clock. "Tomorrow, noon," Mara said. "You sure you want to stick your neck into this machine?" "It's already in there," Ethan said. Now we twist. Sleep came to Ethan like a truce. When morning broke, so did the weather. Wind sheared down avenues, and the sky put on the color of old bones. He walked the 2 blocks from Laura's apartment to a deli for egg sandwiches, collar up, eyes doing the new thing they did, counting threats. At the crosswalk his phone buzzed with a block number. "Mr. Cole," the voice said, as clean as the scent Ethan remembered. "You're becoming a nuisance." "Harrington," Ethan said. "Titles are impolite in public," the man said lightly. "You have a deadline with a journalist." "That is ugly." "You have deadlines, too," Ethan said. "They look like women going missing." A smile moved through the phone line. "This posture won't end the way you imagine. It never does for men like you." "Men like me," Ethan said. The ones who think a single photograph can rehabilitate a conscience, Harrington said, and the softness left his voice the way heat leaves a body at night. You're playing for drama. We're playing for history. Ethan stepped off the curb into the wind and chose not to answer. Silence in a conversation is a shape. He let it cut. You want to trade? Harrington asked after a beat. You give me your originals. I give you a name. Whose? Ethan asked. The woman in the alley, Harrington said. Isn't that what's keeping you awake? Not justice. Not corruption. A face you can't place. The city noise thinned. Ethan stopped walking though his body wanted to run. Say it, he said. Not on the phone, Harrington said. Too modern. Meet me. Pier 42. South End. 10 a.m. Come alone. Bring the originals. Leave with the absence of regret. Bring Laura, Ethan said. You misunderstand, Harrington said, amused again. Detective Martinez is a problem for another room. 10 o'clock. Don't be late. He hung up. Ethan stood in the cold with egg sandwiches cooling in their paper and felt the oldest human argument climb his spine. Bargain or fight. He went back upstairs and put the bag on the table between Laura and Dom like a piece of evidence in a movie. No, Laura said, before he even finished the story. You are not going to a secondary location with a man who names his own rules. He knows about the leak, Ethan said. This is panic pretending to be power. If he offers a name, it's because he thinks he can own me with it. But I want the name. We all want the name, Laura snapped. Then softer. We want her alive. If there's even a chance, Ethan started. Dom cut in, voiced the gravel of authority. Chance of you getting dead is what I see. You're not a soldier. I am a witness, Ethan said. And sometimes witnesses have to walk into the room first. Then none of us make you do it alone, Laura said, pinning him with a look. We do what we always do. We go prepared. You wear a wire. Asha builds his eyes. Dom parks ugly. And you hand him nothing but the certainty that he's being observed. Asha's fingers were already moving, building geometry out of air. I can bounce 2 live feeds to 3 mirrors. Drones are a no, wind's bad. But we can put lens on lens. And the originals? Dom asked. Ethan touched the bag and felt the familiar weight of the Leica and the new weight of what it meant. They don't move, he said. Not for a man who thinks he can ransom a name. Laura exhaled. Then we dance. Pier 42 chewed at the river like a dog with a bad tooth. The wind did its hard work. Laura set Ethan with his back to a bollard and a microphone at his collar. Dom parked 2 blocks away, where a fast exit looked plausible and improbable at the same time. Asha sat with a laptop open on her knees in a car that had seen better winters. Reggie took the north approach, hood up, eyes low. The city watched without blinking. Harrington arrived at 10:03 in a camel coat, alone, hands out of pockets as if to prove his innocence to the cold. He looked smaller away from rooms that liked him. Mr. Cole, he said, as if this were an introduction on a philanthropic stage. You brought the weather. You brought the river, Ethan said, trying to keep the quaver off his words. Harrington looked past him, around him, through him. He had the eyes of a man who had bought his own alibi wholesale. You have something of mine, he said. I have something of yours. You don't have anything of mine, Ethan replied. You have people who belong to themselves. Start by returning them. So American, Harrington said, amused. To think everything's returnable. The name, Ethan said, and in that word he put all the nights, all the motion alerts, all the envelopes and blackout and blood. Say it. Harrington studied him. Then he said, with a small tilt of elegance, habit, not apology, Naomi Lee. The sound of it snapped the air. Ethan had heard the name before. Laura had said it in a room that smelled like coffee and fear, but hearing it from him was different. It was a hand closing into a fist. His chest went tight. Beside Naomi, unspoken but present, stood Gabriella and countless other women the city had not learned to mourn properly. Where is she? Ethan asked. Harrington shook his head. Not here, he said, and he wasn't cruel about it. He was honest the way a storm is honest. Nor where you can be heroic at noon tomorrow. You killed her, Ethan said, not a question. Harrington's face did a small thing, a flinch or an adjustment, then smoothed. Things end, he said. It's not personal. It's systemic. You can rage at me if it helps. People like you confuse individual punishments with victory. We both know the machine replaces parts. Then I'll break the parts one can reach, Ethan said. Your journalist won't publish, Harrington said, almost kindly. She'll get a better offer. They always do. Mara doesn't sell, Ethan said. He saw the moment Harrington realized the clock had changed him, that the leak had given him a spine that would not barter. The man's smile turned brittle. I used to admire photographers, Harrington mused. You make beauty out of mess. But you've mistaken a trick of light for a confession. That ring you hate, it's a circle for a reason. It closes. Stand still, Ethan said, lifting the Leica. Harrington's laugh was almost delighted. Will that save you? It doesn't have to, Ethan said. It just has to keep you. He raised the camera, framed the man against the gray river, the wind cutting a line along Harrington's cheek where money had never. Harrington lifted his hand in a small, careless gesture, the ring flashing in the flat light. Whatever you think you're doing, he said, you're one man with a box. I'm a city with a budget. Smile, Ethan said, and pressed the shutter. The sound was swallowed by wind and amplified in his chest. Harrington flinched, and the flinch wasn't fear. It was fury at being documented without permission. The mask cracked. The man looked like what he was, a thing that had been told yes so long that no unstitched him. You don't get it, he said, and stepped forward one pace too many. You don't get to write the caption. A shape moved in Ethan's periphery. A man, then two, coming from the south end of the pier where concrete breaks into river. Laura's voice whispered in his ear. 2 heavies, 9 o'clock. We're closing. Harrington saw it too. He smiled again, small, resigned. This is the part where you feel righteous. This is the part where I feel human, Ethan said. The first heavy reached for Ethan's arm. Laura's presence hit like a body check. NYPD, she said, badge flashed, stance solid. Hands where I can see them. Dom arrived from the other side with speed that made the air respect him. The heavies recalculated badly. Harrington lifted his hands, not in surrender, but in irritation. Sirens wailed somewhere honest. Footsteps blew in like leaves. Uniforms, detectives, Mara with a notebook and a chin set against pressure. Laura had pulled more strings than she admitted. Mr. Harrington, Laura said, voice formal as stone. You're coming with us on suspicion of conspiracy, obstruction, accessory before and after. We have you with known associates tied to a trafficking investigation. We have you on tape attempting to coerce a witness. Harrington's eyes cooled. You have my ring in a photograph, he said. You have my presence at parties. You have an imagination. And a witness, Ethan said. Harrington glanced at him, pitying. A hobbyist with a grudge, he said. A man I warned for his own good. I am civic-minded. Asha's voice crackled in Ethan's ear with the joy of someone who had just beaten an equation. Ethan, tell him to take off the ring, she whispered. Why? He murmured back. Tell him, she said. Ethan looked at Harrington's hand. Take the ring off, he said, louder than he meant. Harrington blinked. That's not how warrants work. Humor me, Ethan said, and raised the camera again. For a second it was ridiculous. Then Laura caught the rhythm. Remove the ring, she said. Now? Harrington considered refusing, then decided on contemptuous compliance. He slid the ring off and held it between thumb and forefinger, a small victory he thought he owned. Asha spoke into the open channel, voice sharp with triumph. UV lamp, she said. Now? Laura had one in her pocket because Laura carried a world in her pockets. She snapped it on. The ring flared. Faint lines lighting up within the crest, tracer ink Asha had coded into the bait proofs at the warehouse. A tiny constellation, numbers hidden inside laurel leaves. What is that? Dom asked, craning. Coordinates, Asha said. I salted the fake proofs with micro-engraved tracer in the ink. If they handled the paper and then the ring, the transfer would stick in ridges and grooves. I thought we'd get smudges. We got a map. Laura held the ring under the light and read the invisible numbers. They made a grid that wasn't Manhattan. They made a promise that something was somewhere. Upstate, Asha said, already typing. An old boarding school converted to a retreat. Owned by a Lux-adjacent foundation. I'm sending the exact address. Harrington watched something close to surprise make a dent in his composure. Then he did something so small it would have been easy to miss. He looked away toward the river, toward the horizon where a thin line of trees pretended the city had ever been wild. The look lasted a heartbeat. It was enough. Laura saw it. So did Ethan. We move now, she said. On what authority? Harrington asked, but no one answered him. Dom was already on the radio. Voice turned to legalese and urgency. Asha was on with a federal liaison who owed her 3 favors. Mara's pin scratched like claws. Within an hour, tires were eating miles of gray highway. Sirens made a braided sound. Ethan sat in the back of an unmarked car with Laura, the Leica in his hands as if it might break if he let go. Trees blurred by like rationale. Snow spit at the windshield and gave up. The retreat sat behind a gate that had never been told no. The sign out front was discreet, a name that promised healing, a logo that suggested trust. The guard at the booth looked like a PE teacher who'd found religion. He didn't get to say much before Laura's badge and the unmarked behind them explained the day. They went in hard but careful. Laura's orders contained exactly the right amount of mercy and none of the wrong amount of panic. Dom and Reggie peeled left and right with teammates whose faces looked like purpose. Asha stayed in the car with her laptop and turned locks into ideas. Ethan followed Laura down a hallway, painted a soothing color that made him think of waiting rooms. He felt the world narrowing to an essential point, a lens closing aperture until only the necessary light got through. They found 3 rooms that should have been empty and weren't. They found women. 6 of them. Alive. Underfed. Shocked into stillness the way deer are shocked into myth. Nurses, if that was the word, began to shout. A man in a blazer tried to invent a fire code violation to stop Laura at a threshold. Dom's voice solved the problem. Ethan froze. Not because he didn't know what to do. Because the first woman he saw had Naomi's face from the photo in Laura's folder. Not Naomi frozen in a scream. Not Naomi pixelated in a reflection. Naomi now. Pale. Trembling. Real. She saw Ethan's camera and flinched. He put it down, both hands open. It's okay, he said, and did not take a picture. You're okay. Chaos built. Order followed. Paramedics appeared as if conjured. Paperwork began growing like fungus. The healthy kind, the kind that covers rot. Ethan heard a noise and realized it was him. Something between a laugh and a sob. Naomi spoke first with a voice that sounded like a draft aloud in a sealed room. Was it you, she asked. The man with the camera. He nodded. And the woman with the badge, he said, tipping his head at Laura. And the woman with the computer. And the man with the car. And a reporter with a notepad that's going to hurt a lot of feelings. She tried to smile and found the muscle again. I thought nobody saw me, she said. I saw you. Ethan said. And the words were a vow and an apology. They brought the women into air. Reporters arrived like weather. One of Harrington's lawyers materialized at the gate like an expensive genie demanded by a desperate wish, mouth already full of the word allegedly. Asha texted the clock emoji to Mara, and Mara's story hit at 11:59. Photos, names, the ring under UV, the coordinates, the raid, the list of donors, the quotes no one remembered giving. By evening, the city had become a courtroom without walls. Harrington walked out of a glass building in handcuffs. His coat still perfect, his hair still perfect, his smile broken. Cameras ate him. Ethan didn't raise his own. The photos were in the world now. They didn't need him to multiply them. He stood on the sidewalk outside the precinct where chaos had chosen to be useful and watched Laura brief a cluster of press with the exact number of words that told the truth and hid the names that still needed hiding. Naomi and the others were on their way to hospitals, to families, to long, hard work of returning to a life that would never quite be the same. Nothing was fixed. Something was right. When the noise dimmed and the cold settled into his bones in that reassuring way that means you're still here, Ethan walked 3 blocks east to nowhere in particular. The sky had given up the pretense of blue hours ago, and the streetlights had turned everything to theater. He passed a shop window that had once been part of the worst night of his life, and stopped without meaning to. The glass reflected him. It also reflected the city behind him. A kid on a bike popping the smallest, cockiest wheelie, 2 girls sharing earbuds, a man in a delivery jacket yawning so wide his jaw tried to find a new arrangement. Accidents, all of them. Gifts, all of them. Ethan lifted the Leica and almost didn't take the shot. But that's not who he was anymore. Or maybe that's exactly who he still was. He focused, exhaled, and pressed the shutter. Click. No one would call this one evidence. No one would write a warrant on it or clean their conscience with it. But it would live in his archive next to the others and remind him that the world is halved by the decision to look and to keep looking. His phone buzzed. A text from Laura. You good? He typed. Not yet. But better. She wrote back. Coffee in an hour? We start again tomorrow. He smiled. Always. He tucked the Leica away, its weight familiar again, no longer contraband but a tool. He started walking. The rain began as if the city had remembered its favorite trick. Neon laid itself down on wet pavement like silk. Somewhere far off, a siren did its old sad song, and somewhere nearer someone laughed at a joke that had nothing to do with justice. Ethan turned a corner and kept going, the camera warm in his hand, the night full of stories that hadn't asked to be told and would be told anyway. He was not safe, not really, but he had learned the difference between being unharmed and being alive. And for once, that felt like enough.